Kesubos Daf contains two sugyas. The first sugya is discussing the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana, as to what happens if a woman is held captive. Do we assume that she was considered to be she was biktushasa, she was not nival to the captors? We know that we assume that as far as halachos of kanas, we assume that for all other halachos as well. Then our second sugya is the sugya of kamle b'dirami minei, and what is the source? We will have 7 different psukim that all seem to say the same thing. The Gemara will explain why we need each of them. So let's begin. Our first sugya, again, is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda the Tana. In our last Mishnah, we've seen that Rabbi Yehuda holds that a woman who is held captive is assumed to, according to most opinions, lose her psulim, but Rabbi Yehuda says she's assumed to still be a psula. And the Gemara had said that there was an Amora Rav who said that Rav Yochanan, that is, who said that that's true in all other halachos to which being a psula is relevant as well. And the Gemara is not questioning a series of questions where we seem to see that Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana, holds that it is not true. She's not assumed to be a psula. The Gemara has another question along those lines. So the Gemara is going to ask the question, 2 different versions. The first one is easily answered. We'll get the second one, and then we'll answer it. So the question was asked by Rav Papa Bashmuel to Rav Yosef, and he asked the question from a brisa, which seems to show that Rabbi Yehuda holds that a woman who's held captive or converted is not considered to be a psula. So the Gemara quotes the brisa length. There's 2 machloksin in the brisa between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosef. The first one is not relevant to our sugya, but the Gemara does bring it. And we'll get to the second one, which will be our proof. So the first one requires a bit of introduction. The halacha is that a woman who sees dam nida, she sees blood, becomes tamei, and any taharos, any truma, something like that that she touches has to be burned. Now, if she's a bas Yisrael, she's a regular Yisraelis, then we have a 3-way machlokes from when we metami things that she touched. Even if she sees blood, she sees dam nida, let's say at 12 o'clock on Tuesday, we're afraid that that blood might have been there before. It may have been already left the uterus, but was held still within the canal, and therefore she's tamei already, and she's matami things from earlier. So there is a number of opinions. There's that she has to be matami only from the time she sees the blood, or that we're matami anything she touched for the preceding 24 hours, or that we are matami everything she touched until the last time she did a bedika. She checked to see that she doesn't have blood. Those are 3 opinions as far as Bas Yisrael. Now the question here is as far as a gioris, a woman who converts, and on that day, within 24 hours of her conversion, she sees blood, she sees dam nida, and she had touched some taharas between when she converted and when she saw dam nida. And the question is, during that time, is she assumed to be tahar, or do we say that she is tamei retroactively from the previous 24 hours or until the last bedika, like we say as far as Bas Yisrael is concerned? Now, the reason that this is different is because while she was a goy, she was not matame. Dam nida of a goy is not matame anything. So we can't go back to the full period that we usually go back to for Bas Yisrael. Bas Yisrael, if we went back 24 hours, this woman was a goy part of the preceding 24 hours. If we go back to our last bedika, this woman didn't even do a last bedika. So how far back do we go? So Rabbi Yehuda says you don't go back at all. You only assume that she's matami from the time that from when she saw the blood going forward. Anything previous you don't do. Since you can't go back the entire 24-hour period, that's the minimum. You don't go back at all. And anything that she touched preceding to when she saw the blood is not matami. Rabbi Yossi says no, she has the same halacha as everybody else. She goes back to 24 hours according to that opinion. She goes back to the previous bedika according to that opinion. All right, that's the first sugya, not negaya to us. Now the one that is negaya to us is this woman who converted. How long does she have to wait before she's allowed to get married? And the problem is that if she's be pregnant from before she converted, we won't know if her child was a Jewish child because it was conceived after her conversion, or if it was a non-Jewish child, if it was conceived before her conversion. So we should have to wait 3 months to make sure that she's not pregnant. If she would be pregnant, we'd see it by the time 3 months have gone by. Now, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, says she has to wait 3 months. Rabbi Yossi says no, she can get married right away. The Gemara will explain later why that is. So you see here that Rabbi Yehuda is under the assumption that she was nival in the last 3 months. He says that she has to wait 3 months. But here you're telling me that she was not. So the Gemara says, what kind of question is this? We've been discussing here a woman who's a shuya, a regular Jewish woman who is captive. You're talking to me about a gioris who converted. Yeah, gioris is assumed to be nival in the last 3 months before she converts. What does that have to do with this? So the Gemara says, you're right, there's nothing to do with it. That wasn't really my kasha. My kasha was from a different brisa, which talks about a gioris and a shuya together. And it's also a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. That brisa says as follows. It says a gioris, or a shvuya, or a shivcha, which were converted or redeemed or freed, they if they're older than 3 months, they have to wait. If they're older than 3 years old, that is, they have to wait 3 months. Even if they couldn't possibly be pregnant because they're a katana, still we make a plug between a katana and a gedola, and she has to wait 3 months to make sure that she's not pregnant. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yossi says no, she can get married right away. So that's specifically the brisa. It's the same halacha, just here it mentions a shuya specifically. So you see that a shuya, a captive woman, Rabbi Yehuda is concerned that she had a bia and she became pregnant while she was captive, and we have to know who the father is, and therefore we don't let her get married until 3 months after she was brought back into the fold. So how does that fit with what you're telling me, that in every halacha Rabbi Yehuda assumes that she was not nival? So the Gemara says the answer is that that's a different case, and that's talking about where we knew she was nival. Rabbi Yehuda holds that in a case where we don't know, we assume she was not nival. We assume that she's biktushasa. That's talking about where she's a shuya and we know she was nival. Says the Gemara, if we know she was nival, how could Rabbi Yossi possibly say she doesn't have to wait 3 months? So the Gemara says that's because Rabbi Yossi says she definitely used contraceptive. We assume that she did something to make sure that she's not going to conceive from that bia that she had there. What contraceptive? So the Gemara first assumes that she uses a swab of some sort to swab the zera out. A moch, that's called. And the Gemara asks, is it true that she always has a moch available? The Giores makes sense. She's intending on converting. She wants to make sure she doesn't get pregnant. Any bia that she'll do within the preceding 3 months to her conversion, she'll have a swab handy. Shvuya, okay, I can understand that also. She always keeps a swab with her because you never know when she's going to be attacked by her captors. A shifcha, so if she knows she's going to be freed because she's going to be sold, and she may be sold to be free, so there's a strong possibility she wants to make sure, and she'll keep a swab with her at any time. However, what about a shifcha that's freed suddenly because she was hit by her owner and he sent her free because he knocked out a tooth or an eye? There, it happens suddenly and instantaneously. She was not expecting it, so she definitely didn't keep a swab handy. So how could Rabbi Yossi say that she used contraceptive? Now, maybe you'll tell me Rabbi Yossi would say if she's freed suddenly, or if something happens suddenly, then he would say that she does have to wait 3 months. We don't assume she had contraceptive handy. The Gemara says that's not true, because Rabbi Yossi says by an anusa and a mafuta, a woman who's raped or seduced, and that also happens without warning, that they do that Rabbi Yossi there also holds that she does not have to wait 3 months. Only Rabbi Yehuda says she does. So you see, Rabbi Yossi still holds that she don't have to wait 3 months. So what is the reason? The contraceptive doesn't work in a case. You cannot assume she used the contraceptive because she would not have had a swab handy in a case where she had a sudden bia that she was not expecting, or she was suddenly freed and she was not expecting. So the Gemara says, therefore, Rabbi Yossi is not talking about contraceptive with a swab. He's talking about where she does something physically. She turns upside down, she flips, she jumps, she makes a headstand. She can do something, and she doesn't need to have anything handy to make sure that she does not conceive. Now, although such a thing exists, Rabbi Yehuda holds it's not a very effective means of contraceptive, and we're afraid she got pregnant anyway. Rabbi Yossi says, no, you could rely on that. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi says, all these women, even if they had something suddenly, they were suddenly freed or had a sudden bia, they are allowed to be married right away, and we assume that they did not want to get pregnant from it, and they don't have to wait 3 months. All right, now the Gemara goes on to its second sugya for the daf, and that is, what is the source of the halacha that we say, kamli b'derami minei, somebody does not get 2 punishments, he only gets the bigger one. So our Mishnah had given a source for it. It said, ason ya'ane, im yia ason aneshi anesh, im lo yia ason, im lo yia ason aneshi anesh. If nothing terrible happens, meaning if he's not getting the death penalty because the person that he hit did not die, then he gets a punishment. He gets another punishment that clearly shows that had he gotten the death penalty because he killed somebody, he would not get the second one. He would not have to pay or get knas or whatever it is. Umar will speak about that. So therefore, you see, you don't get 2 punishments. That's the source our Mishnah gave. The Umar asks that there's a different source. We have a pasuk that says kidei rishaso. He only gets the 1 punishment that he gets. He does not get 2 punishments. So why do we need these 2 psukim for? So the Gemara says 1 is talking about where he got where he gets the death penalty, he doesn't have to pay an additional monetary fine. And the other is talking about where he gets malchus, he does not have to pay an additional monetary fine. And you need to teach me both of those exclude the monetary fine, both misa and malchus. And the reason is because misa is the stricter punishment and the stricter crime. So you may think, if it only said that, you may think that that knocks out the monetary penalty because the punishment is stricter. It gets misa. Maybe malchus, which is not such a strict punishment, doesn't knock out misa. On the other hand, misa is a stronger crime. So maybe if you only said malchus, that he doesn't have to get malchus and a monetary punishment, that's because the crime was weaker. It's only chayvi malchus, but chayvi misa, which is a very strong crime, he would have to pay and get misa, and therefore you need to tell me both of these are true, both malchus and misa. He does not have to pay a financial knas for each of them. Says the Gemara, that's very nice, but what are you going to do according to Rabbi Meir's opinion? Rabbi Meir holds that a person can get malchus and mammon. He can have to get lashes as well as having to pay a financial punishment. So one pasuk is talking about that you don't get misa and mammon, but what's the other one for? So the Gemara says the other one is for misa and malchus, that you don't get both a misa and a malchus. If you do something which carries the death penalty and also at the same time, or the same isser carries lashes, he doesn't get both of those. Says Gemara, why do I need both? Why do I need both misa and mammon and misa and malchus to show I don't get both of those? Gemara says there's a reason for each. If you only said misa and malchus, then I would think that the reason you don't get both of those is because they're both punishments that apply to the guf. They both apply to the body. We're not going to do two things on the body. If you're killing the guy, there's no point in giving him malchus first, and that's why we wouldn't do that. But to give him mammon, a financial penalty as well as misa, that we could do. And if you only said misa and mammon, so then I would think the opposite. I would think that misa and mammon are two different things. You're not going to give two things. However, misa and malchus, it's really one long misa. You first hit him, and then you kill him. It's all part of the misa procedure, and therefore I would think you could do both of those. And you need to tell me the chiddush that you don't do each of those. All right, so this explains these two psukim. The Gemara says now I have another pasuk. The pasuk says, "Well, if somebody's a murderer, don't take money from him." So this also says you don't get misa and a financial punishment. Why do you need these two things? Why do you need this pasuk? The Gemara says this pasuk is telling you something else. It's telling you not that you don't take two punishments, but you don't take money instead of misa. Somebody who's due the death penalty cannot redeem himself or buy his way out of it by paying a monetary fine at all. Says I have another pasuk very similar. It says somebody who killed someone by accident and has to go to Ari Miklat, he can't pay to get his way out of that. So the Gemara says, what's that for? The Gemara says that's a time that somebody who killed by accident cannot buy his way out of the chiyuv galus, the obligation to go to exile to the Ir Miklat. He can't buy his way out of that with any monetary fines. The Gemara says, why do I need both? Why do I need the pasuk to tell me you can't buy your way out of a chiyuv miso biad based in for killing someone on purpose, as well as saying you can't buy yourself out of a chiyuv exile for killing someone by accident? So the Gemara says you have to tell me both of those. Similar as we said before, mazid, where you get misa, is a stronger crime and also a stronger punishment. So for the stronger, if you would only tell me that the stronger punishment does not get a secondary, you cannot get out of the stronger punishment by paying a fine, I would not know that you can't get out of the weaker punishment. And if you only told me the stronger crime, I would think the stronger crime, that's such a strong crime, that's why you can't pay your way out of it. But a weaker crime, such as a shogeg, you could pay your way out of. Therefore, I need you to tell me both of those. Mar says, okay, and I want to go to my next pasuk. The pasuk says, this is a following on the previous psukim. It says you cannot atone for the earth that had blood spilled upon it without giving the death penalty to the person who spilled the blood. Again, seems to be saying that you cannot get out of it by paying money. So what do we need this for? Somewhere this is an entirely different thing. This is talking about Egla Rufa, and it's saying Egla Rufa is where you find the body of someone who was killed, you don't know who killed him, then the two nearby villages have to come and chop off the head from the nape of the neck of a calf over a river, and everyone says we didn't spill this blood, and everyone therefore absolves responsibility of this. We don't know who kill the guy. Says the Gemara, what happens if you do this procedure of Egla Rufa and then you figure out who the murderer is? Does that mean that you don't have to punish the murderer anymore because you already did something to atone for it? So here we say, the only way that he can get out of it, the only way that he can be handled is by giving him the death penalty for the murder that he committed. The fact that we did Egla Rufa does not absolve him of the punishment that he's supposed to get. Okay, now the Gemara says another pasuk. It says V'ata tevar hadam hanaki mikar becha. You should destroy and avenge, that is, the clean blood which is among you. It's also saying that you should get rid of someone through the death penalty, implying that there is no other way out. So what is that's written right after the end of Eglar Rufa, which would seem to imply the same thing. You have to give the death penalty to the guy. You can't say, oh, Eglar Rufa was done, so therefore he doesn't get anything. So the Gemara says, what is that pasuk for? You already told me that guy can't get out of it based on the pasuk of La'artz Le'Yechupar. So the Gemara says, this is for something else entirely. This is to teach me that the halacha of the misa of the sword, there are 4 different misas based in. One is hariga, that it's besayef, you use a sword to kill the person. How do we know that that's done? By chopping him at the neck. Maybe it was something else. So the limud comes from here that it's being connected through Egla Rufa. It says that connects all the other types of misa to Egla Rufa, just like Egla Rufa is performed at the neck of the animal. So this misa bezin is also performed at the neck of the guilty party who deserves it. Says Gemara, if you can compare it to Egla Rufa, maybe do it all the way. Maybe you should use an axe and chop off his head at the nape of the neck like you do to an Egla Rufa. Gemara says, no, you're not going to do that because the Torah tells us you have to l'recha kamocha. You have to give a person, you have to love everyone, even a person who's guilty, and you have to give him the most pure, clean, painless possible punishment that you can. And therefore, we're going to do it in the most painless way we can. We're not going to do it the same way as you do for the Egla Rufa. Okay, the Gemara says next pasuk, it says, Kol cherem asher yacharam min ha'adam lo yipadeh. Kol cherem seems to be referring to a punishment that somebody gets, and it says lo yipadeh, it cannot be redeemed. This also seems to say he can't buy his way out of a punishment he's supposed to get. What is this pasuk adding? So the Gemara says this is talking about something else. This is talking about a pidyon for a person who is chayav misa. Pidyon meaning to redeem his hektish. It's referring to somebody who is on his way out to be killed because he's guilty. He was found guilty of the death penalty. He's on his way out to have it carried out, and he says erka yalai. He says, I vow my value, my erech, to the Beis HaBikdash. So this is to teach me that he's considered to have no erech. Since he's on his way to be killed, he has only moments left to live. He doesn't have any erech, and he didn't say anything, nothing. There's no obligation. He vowed nothing to the Beis HaMikdash. Nothing has to be given at all. Now, you may think the same thing is true even if he was in court and he said erech yalai, even before the final verdict was passed. Where it says, no, that's not true because it says min ha'adam. It says kol cherem asher yacharam min ha'adam. Not all adam, but min ha'adam. Some people who are in this situation, their consecration doesn't count as anything. However, some people do, and that's someone who's in court. Now the Gemara says this answer doesn't work altogether according to Chanani ben Akavia. Chanani ben Akavia holds that somebody who says erech yalai when he's on his way out to be killed, he does owe his erech, and the reason is that erech is not based on a valuation on the market. The Torah gives a specific number for each individual based on his age and gender. What his erech is? This person has an age and a gender. It may not have a value, but he has an age and a gender, and that's all that erech is based on. So what does he do with his whole pasuk of kol cherem asher yacharam? So the Gemara says he needs that according to the different halacha, the halacha Rabbi Yishmael ben Rabbi Yechanan ben Broika, who says that you may have a source to tell you that you can buy your way out of a misas bezdin, and this is to teach you that you cannot. We know that you could buy your way out of a misa b'dei shemayim. There are certain misa b'dei shemayim that you could get out of. For example, somebody whose ox kills someone, he doesn't get the death penalty in the hands of the Beis because only his ox killed. He didn't. However, he is considered liable b'dei shemayim, but he can give kofer and get out of that. So you may think since he could get out of Misa b'dei shemayim through giving money, through giving a kofer, he can also get his way out of Misas Bezdin through giving a kofer. In this pasuk, kol cherem asher yacharam lo yipada, he cannot get his way out of that at all. Says Gemara, what do you mean? That can't be what this pasuk is for. We already had a source for that. It said L'sikul Kofar all the way up on top. We discussed L'sikul Kofar. That tells me you can't buy your way out of Misas Beis. There's two types of Misas Beis. One is talking about where it was Derech Aliyah. One is talking about where it was Derech Yerida. You kill the person on an upward stroke. You kill the person on a downward stroke. The upward stroke does not have any version that goes to Golos without Misa. Someone kills on an upward stroke by accident, he cannot say that he was an accident, that it was an accidental killing, and therefore he should go to exile, because the upward stroke doesn't apply. It only applies on the downward stroke. Therefore, that's considered more severe, and you need an extra pasuk for that. The other one would be to teach me in a case where there is a kapara, if he could go, that if it was b'shogeg, he could go to exile, he could go to Ir Mikla to get out of responsibility for that. That's a bit lighter, and therefore you need an extra pasuk to teach me that halacha separately.